Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda, and today I have for you my TBR for the first 2 months of the year. I decided that in 2019, instead of doing monthly TBRs, I kind of wanted to do a TBR for 2 to 3 months at a time. That way I could kind of mood read a little bit as the month progresses. So for my first bi-monthly TBR, which is going to be January and February, I've got 12 books that I have planned to read. Some of them I may not get to. I'm probably definitely going to pull in other books. So just kind of whatever I feel like reading for these first 2 months. But these are books that are kind of wintry reads, kind of have a I guess kind of like a Valentine's Day feel to them, since some of these are going to cover the month of February, and just kind of that end of winter, beginning of spring sort of feel for me. So the first book I want to get to is a book I have on my Kindle, and that is After. I'm not entirely sure who the author is, but I bought this book because I think it's becoming a movie in 2019, and I saw the previews on YouTube and it just seemed interesting, so I decided to start buying the books. And I did buy the first couple probably on ebook on my Kindle, so I just want to get to that because I do feel like I kind of neglect the books on my Kindle a little bit. So I wanted to make sure that when I picked some books, I wasn't just picking all the physical books that I have behind me, but also some of the audiobooks and ebooks that I own. So that's the first one I want to get to. The next book I have on my list is Blanca and Roja by Anna Marie McLemore. This book came out in October of 2018, and it's the latest book that Anna Marie McLemore has published. It's the only one of her books that I haven't read yet, and I kind of wanted to wait until the springtime to read this because it is a loosely Swan Lake retelling, and it just sounds really interesting. It's about two sisters and how their lives and their family is tied to a bevy of swans, and these two boys come in, and I think there's a spell put on them that at the end one of the sisters is supposed to be turned into a swan, and so it's just kind of that story of this spell that's been put on the family, and either the romance or relationship that they build with the two boys that come in as well. This is a magical realism book, and I've really liked all of her books that I've read so far, so I am really looking forward to this, and I have pretty high hopes for it. And then another book that I plan to get to this month is the Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. This was actually recommended to me by Skylar's mom, and she described it as kind of like a dark fairy tale book. So I don't exactly know what it's about. I just know that it sounded good, and I wanted to add it to my TBR. I do have the physical format of this, and I also have the audiobook format of it because Skylar did say he wanted to listen to it. And basically Audible is the only way that I can get him to read books. So I do have it in two different formats. I'm not entirely sure yet if I'm going to listen to it or read it. But it looks like this follows the life of a 12-year-old boy mourning the death of his mom, and he only has books for company. So I think the books kind of start to whisper to him and tell him things, and it looks like he probably might get pulled into these worlds, and they might not be all the nice fluffy worlds, but some of the darker worlds as well. So this sounds like a really good read for the winter months, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm looking forward to all these books, otherwise I wouldn't be planning on reading them. And then next on my list is finally diving into the world of Cassandra Clare and the Shadowhunters. I have been debating on whether to pick these books up or not. I think I might be a little bit past the time. I don't have nostalgia for these. I didn't grow up reading them. But the world is so big, and I haven't done a lot of like delving into the more urban fantasy sort of setting. So I might enjoy it. I don't know. I want to see if I actually think that she's just an overhyped author or if she actually does have good tales to tell. Um, so the first book is City of Bones in the Mortal Instruments series, which is like a 5 or 6 book series, I want to say. And basically, the only reason I'm picking this up is because I plan to buddy read it with Darshell over at Books and Planners, and we're planning to pick this up together in February. So that's why it's a part of. Whoops, I just dropped some books, but that's why it's a part of this TBR for my first bi-monthly TBR. And then the next book I have is a book that I have started and haven't picked up for a couple months, but I want to finish Dragonfly and Amber by Diana Gabaldon. One of my goals for this year is to finish series that I've started, and I started reading the Outlander series last year. So I am only 159 pages into this, like 700 and something page book, and it's about time I finish it. These are just, I don't know why I'm not enjoying them as much as I thought I would. I think probably because it focuses so much on the relationship aspect of it, and I wanted more of the historical aspect of it. But this big chunker needs to get finished. I need to stop putting it off and continue on with this series. So then another book that I have planned to read, which I don't know if I'm gonna get around to it for January, February, or if I might save it until March and April, because it does kind of have a wintry springtime feel to me, but I think because it revolves around the Fae, it might be fun to read it more in around March. I don't know, does anyone else like categorize books like that on what moods they feel and how they like interpret certain months and decide what books go along with those? That's just what I do. But I want to pick up An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. I've heard, I think, kind of mixed reviews on this, but I feel like most people seem to like it. And the story revolves around this girl who is a painter. And I think the big implication is that she is asked to paint the royals, and she puts human emotion in the prince's or the king's eyes or something like that, and then there's a big story around that. So it sounds really interesting. It's YA fantasy. It's pretty short, so I do want to get to it pretty soon. Another book that I started and never finished last year was Foundation by Isaac Asimov. I can never remember his name. This is a sci-fi book, and I don't really know what it's about, honestly. I'm probably 60-ish pages into it now. I'm reading it on ebook, and I think it's a total of like 200 and something pages. So it's just a book that I would like to get finished since I did start it and never finished it last year. Another book I want to get to that will help put a dent in my series I want to finish project is Illyrial by Garth Nix. This book is the second book in the Aborzen trilogy, and I know it follows a separate set of characters than the first book did, but basically this series follows a necromancer and his daughter and her plight to save him from basically going into death and like finishing that journey into death. Like there's different stages and stuff. So I'm not entirely sure what storyline this follows, but I think it's quite a few years after Sabriel. So I am looking forward to getting into it. I think this was kind of one of those series that was recommended that if you like Harry Potter, you'll like the Abortion trilogy. And I think a big part of it is because it does have a magical element to it, and part of it is in a school setting. So if you like that, you might enjoy these. But this is a book that has been on my shelves for quite some time. Skylar bought the series for me, and it's about time I make more of a dent in it because I did enjoy the first book. It's just one of those things that I got distracted by all the other books that I have. And another book I have is a classic this time. Actually, the next two are classics. The first one is Little Dorrit by Charles Dickinson. This is just one of his books that I haven't read yet. I'm not entirely sure what the storyline is or the plot of this book. I just know that it's one of his books I want to read. He is one of my favorite authors, and I also have this on audio book, so I do plan to listen to this through Audible because it is quite a chunky book. It's over 800 pages long. So yeah, definitely one to listen to on audiobook, even though that'll be like probably a 30-something hour read, but that is okay. So the next classic I have is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is a classic that I've never actually read, but it basically follows four sisters, and it's set during the Civil War, is it? I think so. I'm pretty sure it takes place in the South, but I'm not entirely positive. I've had this book on my shelf for quite some time, but I really want to read it this year because the new adaptation is coming out with Emma Watson and Saoirse Ronan, so I do really want to read this before that comes out at the end of this year and watch the movie. And then the last book I have, which is pretty good timing because my dogs are in the house and they're complete animals right now, is a book I had picked out for another TBR in 2018 that I never got around to. And this is kind of the last chance for this book. If I don't get to it within these next 2 months, I think I'm finally going to unhaul it. But that is The Paris Key by Juliet Blackwell. It's about a girl who has spent the happiest summer of her life in Paris learning the delicate art of locksmithing at her uncle's side. Living back in the States, she becomes more private and subdued, so like learning how to make locks and keys with her uncle really brings her out of her shell. And I think she grows up a little bit and she's married and might have a kid. And as her marriage is crumbling, she kind of needs to go back to Paris and get back to the heart of what she really loved and enjoyed. And I think potentially take over her uncle's key shop. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, those are all the books that I have planned to read sometime between the next 2 months, and I know I'll throw in a couple more books along the way, but I will do monthly wrap-ups. I just thought that having the ability to kind of mood read would be more beneficial to me, and that way my TBR videos and my wrap-up videos aren't basically the same video. So that is everything. I would love to know what you have planned to read this month, and if you also are doing a TBR for multiple months at a time, please let me know like how you're formatting that, what months you're including, what books you have planned to read. If you're planning to read any of the same books, I would love to know. So I will chat with you down in the comments until my next video. Bye!